When we had our first marketing coordinator come in, she was big on networking, and I found that to be comical. Like, networking is so dumb. What, you're going to go have a beer, have coffee, and you call that work? But then over time, like those connections that you make to get a contact list, and that's what networking does, and the value of it. 20 years down the line, don't burn your bridges. You don't know when your opportunity is going to come.
Welcome to The Boost, a podcast for home service contractors. We explore leaders and innovators in home services, their personal journeys, thoughts, and experiences with growth, marketing, and succession. We cover the good, the bad, the ugly, and its ultimate impact. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Welcome to another episode of The Boost. I'm Zach Wilson, Chief Marketing Officer of Local. Today, we have Ryan Kletz, President of Classic Air Care Incorporated. Classic Air Care owns and operates in 3 cities and 5 different offices for 1-hour heating and air conditioning. Welcome, Ryan. How are you?
Doing well. Beautiful spring day. Not a whole lot of sun here in Virginia Beach, but appreciate you having me.
That's the opposite of here. My basement has flooded in the last week and it hasn't stopped raining. So to all those East Coasters that don't own basements, yeah, you know what? Do you guys have basements there?
So the funny thing is, typically no. About 98% of the homes do not, but I lived in one of the homes before my wife and I moved to where we're at now. Our last home did have one and it flooded all the time. So yeah. I can appreciate the flooded basement.
It's the worst. So let's get into it. So you have quite an interesting journey. You grew up as the son of a small business owner and air care HVAC family, correct?
That is correct. My dad and my uncle been in business. They started in 1979. I was born in 1982. So this is what I grew up with.
This is what you grew up with. Yeah. I was wondering who that was. Alan Heckel? Is that right?
Alan Heckel's my mom's brother, my uncle. His brother-in-law went into business for themselves September 1, 1979.
Gotcha. That's quite a long time. And so tell us about, just as a quick childhood, were you doing much? Were you doing house visits or any office time with your uncle and your dad?
Not a whole lot. Random times. I remember my dad working a ton, supporting a family, but never, ever missing. We were very active in sports. I swam all through college. My dad never missed a damn thing. But these were the days of pagers and payphones. So I do remember quite a bit of pulling over at the local 7-Eleven because the pager went off and my dad had to make a phone call to somebody, right? And now you look back and that somebody was probably a customer that we still have to this day. I spent, a week here, a week there, come high school working in the business, not knowing a thing. I'm not overly mechanically inclined, but so I spent my summers lifeguarding. We're here in Virginia Beach. I took the harder route and had to hang out at the beach all summer, as opposed to the easier route of going up in those 150-degree attics. So I have a little bit of experience, but not really. I didn't grow up per se, riding in the truck and doing all the work.
Well, I think you might have been one of the smarter ones going to the beach and sitting on the guard stand rather than the attic. Any idiot's going to say yes to that job over the attic. I mean, no brainer. So you're 82. You graduated undergrad in what is that, 04, 05?
2005, graduated from the Old Dominion University.
Oh, you were at Enterprise, you said. That's right. From whatever, 04, 05 to then finally joining. You took so long, Ryan. 4 years.
Yeah, the journey was
pretty short.
Coming out of college, I was a journalism major. I was going to be the next great Bob Costas, Jim Nance, pick your sportscaster. I actually had a desire to go into print newspaper, sports journalism. I love writing and love the art of it. Thank God that didn't work out because newspapers, we all know, have really crushed it as of late. But I love my family. We got along great. Wasn't one of those broken homes. Good relationship, 2 sisters, all good. But I wasn't moving home. I tasted that freedom in college and I needed a job. I needed a paycheck where I wasn't going to move home. So my dad had recommended, just through a conversation, Enterprise and how they hire college athletes, people they pursue. So I saw them at the job fair at our student union, talked with them and ended up getting hooked up with Enterprise and actually spent almost 4 years, 3.5 years with those folks. Hard work, cleaning cars and shirts and ties, learned a ton about business, recommended 10 out of 10 times.
In my early 20s, I hung out with a bunch of people, played intramural sports or whatever with a whole bunch of Enterprise guys and girls, and it seemed like they had a really fun time at work.
It was a true work hard, play hard kind of thing. Yeah, we got the work done, learned a ton about business, made lifelong friends, and hey, I'll take it.
So by 2008, if my reading was correct and everything, your uncle was no longer in the business. He had exited.
Yeah, my uncle retired before I got into the business. I came in July of 2008. So he had retired, rode off into the golfing sunset, and still does to this day.
Gotcha. What year was that? Was that prior to joining? Was it Authority Brands at that point? 1 Hour franchise group?
Clockwork Home Services, which is still kind of the parent of, yeah, it was right before I came. So it was maybe late 2007 or early 2008 that Alan, my uncle, retired from the business.
Gotcha. He went through the changing. I'm doing this really out of order, but somewhere in the growth of classic air care, Ryan's dad and uncle joined the 1 Hour group in 2004 specifically, and your uncle was part of that joining forces, and then he retired a few years later, and then you came on.
Exactly. Yeah. 2004, We joined the 1 Hour group, still remain Classic Air to this day, but Classic Air is 1 Hour. And yeah, my uncle at some point, and again, I apologize, I don't have the exact dates, but he decided that it was time to move on for himself. And so my dad took that 1 Hour brand and made that kind of his champion. They together built the Classic Air brand. My dad took the 1 Hour brand and started assembling his team, and here we are to this day.
Let's just talk about that a little bit. It's a little different model, right? Compared to a lot of other holdcos, if you will, or groups that are doing home service brands and acquiring home service brands. You guys are doing that via franchises, correct? So you're multi-brand franchise owner is really what you guys are. Not that it's any different, just distinguishing the two from a label. You're not a holding company. You're not private equity. You're a multi-brand franchise owner is what I would call it, right?
I think that's a fair way to put it. Now, for full transparency, full disclosure, we do have an equity partner that is a very minority interest. They have, I can give you exact numbers, but about 25% of our business. So it's not that we do it fully on our own, but that's different than most people. We still retain significant majority interest in our operations, and they are really brought on as a business partner to help vet these acquisitions, not as much for the capital, like a lot of places, are looking for. We're doing it more for the business expertise and the ability to close these deals. So what we started looking at is we wanted to acquire, we wanted to grow. And within the 1 Hour system, there are some challenges and some limitations of who can come in and who can go out. They vet who they bring in as partners just as much as we do. And we found that the existing 1 Hour franchisees, the people that were already in the system, for whatever reason, whether they didn't have a second generation in the business, or maybe business was tough, or maybe they just didn't know what the heck to do, that people needed some exit strategies. And we view that to be just, I'll call it a low-hanging fruit, but it was a win-win for everybody. It's a win for the existing owner. It's a win for us. So we've been able to get together with existing 1 Hour franchisees, provide them some capital, some exit, maybe buy out of debt. And we find ourselves very valuable 1 Hour assets.
Two questions there. Just clarification on the equity partner. The equity partner is a group or a sole proprietor?
No, it is a private equity group. In the private equity world, considered a boutique firm. It's small. 2 people run it. There's 2 other silent partners. They are a full-fledged private equity group who has commitments to their shareholders. Yep, we make distributions to them just like most private equity groups.
I was just clarifying. And then the other one, from an acquisition standpoint, wasn't sure, are you only targeting existing 1 Hour franchises, or are you targeting any HVAC that could then be onboarded as a 1 Hour franchise, or both?
Both is kind of the quick answer. Only limitation that we have is that we are committed to the 1 Hour brand. Like if we go into a place that's not a 1 Hour, we will make them 1 Hour. If there's an existing 1 Hour in that market, we're not going to explore a non-branded. So say you have it, Zach, and you have no interest in selling. You're good. You're happy with your 1 Hour. But there's another guy in your market that wants to sell. We're not going to touch that because, hey, we can't turn into a 1 Hour. We can't compete with our brother in that market. But if there's major cities without a 1 Hour in it, we will explore all options. And then the existing 1 Hours are the easier targets because they're already branded.
Right. You don't have all the corporate friction, if you will, to vet and approve, right? It's pretty clean.
A little smoother, a little easier through the franchisor side, who we have a great relationship with.
Just on that, this is kind of new territory for me from a interviewee standpoint, which is why I wanted to have you on, because I'll just digress real quickly. It's remarkable. We haven't done a ton of this. This is, I don't know, our 11th or 12th or something like that interview. Out of those, there hasn't been one that's been the same. In terms of how owners and operators are looking at buying, selling, management, ownership, succession, etc., it's quite fascinating, which again was why your model kind of piqued my interest. So anyway, just a little bit more on the 1 hour brands. As I mistakenly said in our pre-interview, thought you guys had 10 locations, and most of those quote unquote locations were just service areas in one market. How does Classic Air in general evaluate where to go? What are the restrictions, geographically speaking, that you're bound to?
We have our own internal boundaries that we've created. We are not bound to any restrictions through Authority Brands / 1 Hour, the franchisor. Again, they've been supportive of what we do, but our restrictions are, it's funny, these evolve as we started getting into acquisitions. The very first one we did was in Nashville, Tennessee. Thing we never even thought of when doing this acquisition. We thought Nashville, beautiful city, booming, look at all the metrics, everything, that's a home run. One thing we never considered was the ease of travel. How easy is it for us to get from Virginia Beach to Nashville? Luckily today it's changed, but at the time there was no direct flights.
Welcome to my world.
9 to 11 hour flight. So the first month I became a Delta, whatever you call them, medallion member, but holy cow, we are spending more time on airplanes and tarmacs than we're actually in the location. We've kind of zeroed into either a direct flight or east of the Mississippi as our just internal boundaries, looking for any 1 hour east of the Mississippi or that we can get a direct flight to.
Gotcha. That's a general geographic restriction that you've imposed for, I guess, life convenience, right?
Not to say that if somebody from, I'm picking a city, I don't even know if there's one out there, say Wichita, Kansas came a knocking, I don't know what we would do. I don't believe we got a direct flight to Wichita from Norfolk, but we'll explore that. So we're going to listen. We'll kick the tires on anything.
Obviously, if you're going into a 1 hour brand from acquisition, like we discussed, that's easy, right? It already exists, doesn't have to pass that test. But if you're going into independently owned one, the obvious litmus test is same service area, same market. That's easy. But what are the geographic restrictions that Authority Brands or 1 hour, whoever has ultimate say in that, bringing in a new franchise?
There's not a ton of restrictions. Now, I don't know if that's them as a franchisor because we have a proven track record. I think we'll sign off on much of what we want to do, but they haven't really restricted anything. So within the franchise system, you buy the territory, and that's territory by zip codes. Every zip code in America, right? So in Virginia Beach or in our Hampton Roads market, I don't know how many we own. I'm going to guesstimate 30 zip codes. Okay. Make that number up.
Okay.
And nobody can come in and operate or purchase that territory. It is ours for the length of our term. They will provide us, if that territory is unowned, what zip codes are unowned. And from there, we can go through and do our diligence to make sure we're getting to a unowned territory.
That kind of helps answer my question because I'm not a franchisee or anything. I have looked at a bunch in different capacities, full disclosure, Dunkin' Donuts, Dairy Queen, etc. And so I know enough to be dangerous about franchises and not enough to own one. But just between those two and what you've said, their territories are all set up very differently. They're defined very differently. And what you said for the home service world and the HVAC world, I think actually makes a lot of sense, is that it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Authority Brands basically just said every single zip code has a franchisee license, and that's how we're going to break up our territories. Is that correct?
That's the most simplistic way to put it. Yeah, they get down into some minutia of stuff, but yeah, the most simplistic way, you buy the zip codes and that's what you get.
So next question, because we have a bunch of clients that have sort of stepped into this way, that they're acquiring businesses just to acquire contact lists, right? So have you gone into any zip codes to get presence and just bought those decrepit or whatever type of assets just to acquire the customer contacts, or are you looking at that as a acquisition strategy for some of these maybe underserved? Can't tell you how many people I talked to, and a handful of our clients that acquired their businesses from owners that are just like, I'm just tired. I don't even care. Like here, take the keys.
Yeah. So we've done that in Virginia Beach. And when we look at our satellite markets, something we've looked at as a growth strategy. We've been in each of these. We got into Nashville in 2018. So going on 6 years come this winter. We've only been in approaching 2 years this winter. We're still relatively immature in these markets, and we are still trying to establish, because they maybe were underserved from the branding standpoint in each of the markets. So we've had to spend a little bit of time making sure we get our name established. And from there, strategies such as acquiring small operations, book of businesses, all of those things come into play. That, to me, that's the fun stuff, right? That's when we get to grow the business, and I look forward to those kind of things.
It's interesting too, because the valuation of, still have not pinned this down myself, but the valuation of, what's the value of a customer or a contact or whatever in the HVAC world, not easy to pin down. And it depends market to market, how many active clients, how many membership clients, how many service clients, et cetera, versus just contacts in your CRM or whatever, right? Each one has a different sort of value and threshold. And that's ultimately what you're buying, especially with today's technology in terms of, and the systems that are in process to take some of those assets, namely inactive customers, right? Quote unquote, reactivate them, right? It's just amazing what you can do. The owners that are older and maybe less savvy in terms of technology, they let a lot of those go, and you can get them for pennies on the dollar if you have the right system.
You mentioned technology. I mean, technology has made the value of some of those things maybe a little more enhanced, because you can reach that customer of so many more ways,
right,
so much easier than even 10 years ago, where email was still not in the stage that it is today. So between call, text, AI, I mean, there are so many ways that just having the contact info has really become more valuable today than it ever has.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. Do you guys have a copy and paste strategy for when you acquire in terms of activating those customers' contacts?
Our main thing is just to reach out and say, hey, we're still here for you. And then over time, we're going to try and find ways to extract a little more and show a little more value to what the services that we offer. And in turn, the customer pays hopefully a little more for it.
Know a ton about Authority Brands and 1 Hour specifically, but as the franchisee and operator of 5 different cities, is a lot of that stuff in place, or are you, as an owner operator, do you have a lot of freedom and play in terms of, I know we've talked about advertising and things like that, so I know you guys are doing that, but differently, but in terms of your acquisition strategy, I mean, do they have a ton of systems, or is it just, you're basically just licensing their brand and everything else is kind of on you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to take this back and I'm going to bring it back to this question here. But from the day one of the 1 Hour system, there's a name in the heating and air conditioning industry named Jim Abrams. Jim is probably the single GOAT. I mean, when we talk go to goats, he is the legend of the industry. And he started 1 Hour heating and air conditioning. And he established, at the time called OPEX, the operating manual that we all use. And we still use the same operating manual from 2004 really to this day. Now it has been tweaked and changed. So that is what we have used in Virginia Beach for our success to build the business to where we have. We do implement that in all of our locations, no matter what. As far as the strategy to get there, the 1 Hour team offers it. We have become a little self-sufficient, a little cocoon of our own making. It's not because they don't offer, but we have our own internal marketing team. We have our own client care team. Just over time, we've had to establish these kind of things to keep our own sanity. So it's not that they don't, Authority Brands doesn't offer it. They have their own marketing team, but we had established our own, so we like to replicate that in other markets. They have a service that can answer your phones, but we've established and built out what we think is a very good client care team, so we're going to continue to use that. So it's not that they don't have it, we don't utilize it, but it's more because we were growing at the pace that we had to do it, and they kind of came after that and have established some good things that can help hopefully people in the future.
Again, going back to the franchisee and your franchise fees, right? Franchise fees pay for certain things. So are you, in terms of the 1 Hour model, are you double paying for some of that things? CSR, service center, marketing, I would imagine that's probably not covered, but maybe.
So we do pay a marketing fee. I know those things.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. Are we double paying? Possibly. What we do know is that in our partnership with 1 Hour, we have grown. We've grown significantly. We remain very profitable. And, to us, maybe some of that's the cost of doing business. Yeah. I've never really sat down and broken it down as to what we pay for versus what we get and don't get. We have a good relationship. Our business has been established. It continues to grow and provide for lots of people, our teammates, and then the customers. So it's one of those things that, there's a good chance we do. And probably we all do in our business for something.
The one that jumped out at me was call center, right? If you've got your own, the franchisee, they're like, here to get up and running, use our call center or whatever. That one's probably one that jumps out. But if you're profitable, and who cares?
Those are things that maybe one day we would look at and have a discussion with those fine folks. Now, I think it would be fair for them to say, but you can eliminate that cost from your own business, use ours, and that's fine.
Right.
It's the price that we choose to do because we're very comfortable with how our team operates. And our client care team here in Virginia Beach is from 6 a.m. to midnight, 365 days a year. So, we just feel comfortable with that peace of mind, knowing that it's our team, the people that sit in our building, speak our language doing it.
Right. To your point, that's something that you've invested in and you're getting more value out of than the national version or the franchise or version of it. And you're still profitable. And I don't know if how you guys work internally, if you have annual conference and stuff, discuss sort of margins and things like that and profitability.
Yeah, and we do. We get together once a year. Authority Brands has, I believe, 14 or 16 different brands under their umbrella, everything from cutting down trees. They have a dog shit service that picks up dog crap. Like, it's amazing. America's a great country. So one year, all 16 brands get together. And then on the off years, the home services brands, heating, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, get together. So yeah, we get together once a year. Our profit margin remains very, very, very healthy. And, if that includes a cost for our client care team, hey, maybe more people should explore it. Maybe they shouldn't. That's a beauty. We still get to operate our franchise the way we want, do what's right for the customer, and make sure we protect the brand at all costs.
Going back to that 2004, when they decided to join forces, what were they looking to gain? What was the goal there? Because it sounded to me they were doing pretty well in Hampton and pretty good, loyal local brand. They approached 1 Hour, or 1 Hour approached them.
So my dad had been hooked up with Jim Abrams and his group. He was part of Airtime 500, which is still around to this day. And before that, Contractor Success Group, CSG, kind of these infinity groups, better business practice groups. And my dad really bought into what Jim sold, the methods, the methodology, the training. And I think we're coming down off a very high of the private equity roll-ups within our industry. But back in 2004 was the last time this really happened. And Jim was putting together a group to bring 1 Hour public. It was going to have an IPO, be a publicly traded heating and air conditioning. And my dad saw the vision of that, of being part of a publicly traded heating and air company. That was his exit strategy moving forward. He was going to stay in the business, run it. I was in college as a journalism major, showing absolutely no interest in being in this business. I have two sisters that were in college for teaching. My uncle was talking about retiring, I'm sure, at that point. So he's sitting there with really no exit strategy. He built a nice business, nothing to, it's not what he built today, but it was at a nice part, but he had nowhere to go with it. So this IPO became kind of intriguing to him from a guy that he trusted and believed in. What ended up happening, the market kind of crashed. The IPOs and the roll-ups, kind of like we're seeing today, kind of slowed quickly. The market dried up. And Jim decided not to go public, but he had already brought about 20 of these folks under an umbrella of 1 Hour. And that's how the franchise was born.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. In my understanding, the growth was a franchise model, but the growth was really IPO first, and then that didn't work. So
intended to be IPO. It never went public.
Right. Being a franchisor was basically the fallback, if you will. Accidentally.
It was meant to be that catalyst to bring everybody together.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be what it ended up being, but it obviously was a system that now has grown to over 250 locations across the country.
So you've talked about this a little bit because of your experience in now 5, right? Is it 1-to-1, 5 acquisitions? Well, no, 4 acquisitions, right? Because you have the one original one and then 4 acquisitions. How do you guys look at it?
So we just look at it via city. So to me, we've done 2 acquisitions, but within Nashville, there are 2 totally different owners. They were 60 miles apart. So we did complete 2 different deals in Nashville. In Pittsburgh, there were actually 3 different owners. So we completed 3 different deals. Now, when I talk about it, we've done 2 deals. We've done Nashville, we've done Pittsburgh, but we did negotiate with 5 different owners.
Well, I would call that 5. That sounds like 5 different headaches. That's 5 different headaches. Your letters of intent, your contracts. I mean, that's definitely 5 different deals. Okay. Well, there we go. Ryan has done 5 different deals. 5 different acquisitions. So anyway, you've talked about this, and I think I missed it. I think it was on the docket. This was at ACCA, was your discussion about derailing an acquisition, right?
That was ACCA this year. I wanted to say how to fuck up an acquisition. They wouldn't publish that, so we went with derail.
Well, there you go. That just shows you ACCA. They're a little more conservative than the industry. You could probably pull that off in most other places. Let's just talk about that. Have you had any acquisitions that did get derailed, that didn't make the 5 acquisitions? And what are the things that you now know going into acquisition that you're like, okay, we don't want to do this or that to keep it on track and make sure it does not get derailed?
We have had 1, 2, 3 that have come to different levels of under LOI that came to different levels that we didn't get to the finish line on.
Oh, okay.
We probably, kissed a lot of frogs, probably another dozen or so that we've explored in some form or fashion, some more serious than others, but never even got to LOI. We are a smaller operation, right? We don't have this apparatus as all private equity groups or we are doing a lot of the legwork ourselves and doing the diligence. So we're a little more cautious in how we move, making sure the deals fit with our existing leadership team, that we can support them the right way. But we got to two of them were borderline 11th hour. One was, we'd already bought a 72-inch TV. This was 8 years ago, put it in the operation to start a contest on the first day. And we got a email or text. I think it was email New Year's Eve, like a 2-line email that says, "No thanks, we're not doing this." He was still there. And then the other one was,
wait. What was the lesson there? Don't give away a TV before the deal is signed.
Nice guys finish last is the lesson.
Yeah, there you go.
But and then we did one that woke up. My father, the kind of the last one that he was really involved with. He made the call at about 6 a.m. of the day we were supposed to close it. It just wasn't right. And I could have killed him. I mean, absolutely murdered him that day. He was 100% right looking back on it and seeing what the business was and even what we knew. Like, we got our blinders on. We had done all this legwork, a lot of travel, felt good about doing it. 100% the right call now that we look back. So, yeah, we've gone through every stage of it. Yeah, my presentation was all about how to screw it up once we were actually in there.
Oh,
Now
gotcha.
that we've acquired those mistakes that we've made along the way once we did get to the finish line, I could give a whole nother presentation on the things we've learned screwing up before we got to the finish line.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about. So I guess since everybody else except me heard I can't remember why I couldn't make that. I can't remember if I wasn't there or we were a room sponsor, and I think it overlapped with that or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, what happened? Spoke quickly about 2 of the 3 of them. Was there? What was the story on the third?
I mean, through time, just through some of the diligence period, it became pretty obvious. We were all in alignment that it just wasn't one to.
We have one that was you guys, another one that was them, and this one was mutual.
I'm not sure if it was mutual from the other party. We all agreed amongst our team.
Internal. So, we gotcha.
Yeah, okay, internal. Gotcha. We. This was one that we just kind of kept getting together and be like, we're jamming that round peg into the square hole too much here.
Yeah. What were the things that were percolating, if you will, that just didn't feel right? You feel like they're not being honest. You're not getting the right data. They're, culture fits. I mean, what do we have that we're working with here?
In the famous words of Tim, who works with me, yes. All of the above, honestly.
Okay.
It's like everything you said are those things. Like, the numbers maybe don't add up. And you ask for an explanation and you may get a little there's one thing that when we talk and I can say, no, this is why we put the numbers where we do. Okay, I feel confident in that. The other is, I think, let me check with the bookkeeper. And then you talk to the team, maybe the culture is a little off. Hey, why isn't that person here? Oh, wait, that doesn't jive with what I just heard from the. So you put all those things together. A lot of it, there's the analytical side, right? I love numbers. I love crunching numbers. But then there's a gut. And I refereed college basketball for years. And one of a local partner that I worked with a lot, in his pregame speech, he would say, have the guts to trust your gut. And that was kind of the thing with that acquisition. Hey, it just didn't feel right.
Yeah. That's sage advice. That's for sure. I was in Dallas this last weekend, and I rode home with an NBA ref that lives in my town. And incidentally, he's a super tall dude. And I just asked him about his sweatshirt, and which was I can't remember what it said, but it was, some sort of homage. And I was like, and it had like the NBA logo. And I was like, who's that? Or what's that? And this was kind of sad. He was like, oh, it's for so-and-so on our team that died of pancreatic cancer. And I was like, on your team? And like, this guy was, I think it was my age, actually. It was like late 40s. I can tell by your age that you're definitely not still playing. What do you mean your team? He's like, oh, I'm an NBA ref. And I was like, oh, that's something you don't hear or meet every day, and let alone like live in my town. So I was like, that's kind of a fun story. But anyway, what about the other 2? What were those that were, you probably don't know what the other one emailed you at.
We have a pretty good guess on why the one that canceled on us. And we think they thought that we showed them the way, essentially. That the only difference between their operation and ours was marketing. See,
really?
It was how we marketed. And now that we shared our wisdom that was going to be the game changer. And based on what we see today, maybe it wasn't. But hey.
They still independent today? They were already 1 hours. These were all already franchisees. Oh, interesting. And it was that? Huh.
So we don't see the one that ghosted us and left us at the altar. They don't go to meetings anymore. No hard feelings to this day. It would have been a great opportunity both for them and for us. We would love to get together with them one day if they ever wanted to.
What do you mean they don't go to meetings? Yeah.
Those franchise meetings that I talked about when we get together.
Oh. So they're still participating in the franchise, but they're not active participants, I guess.
That's what it appears, so
wow.
We don't stay in touch. And then the other one that we backed out of, Right Call 11th Hour, they are still in business under the 1 Hour name, and we don't see them ever either. So,
to your knowledge, neither has transacted to other parties. Is that all public?
It's not public, but we tend to know.
So 1 Hour, the franchise, or doesn't disclose who owns what?
I'm not going to say they won't. I don't want to speak for them. I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, it's just not some database you can look up and say who owns.
Yeah, and it's not something that they send an email, congratulations to the new owner of this franchise. I don't think they're adverse to it. I'm sure I could ask and find out anything I wanted, but it's not something that comes out in like a monthly email.
It's interesting that it's not. I don't know. I'm trying to think of that because there are people preparing for this just on my end. There's a lot of information on owners. There's other multi-franchise owners out there, and it's very easy to find that information. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Find out about most of these things through press releases. Our equity partners will send us over that because they know people in all the different equity worlds. At the 1 Hour in Pennsylvania just sold a week or two ago, press release came out. We didn't know that. We know those owners, but didn't know that they were in discussion or anything like that. So we find out via press release like a lot of people.
Back to the acquisitions of the 8, I guess 5 you completed and 3 you didn't complete. Was any one more complicated than the other, and why?
So the one that bailed on us, left us at the altar, was the last one that we attempted to do before we partnered with private equity. And that was, we said, we don't know what we're doing. We've get these deals near the finish line, but we cannot seem to get them over the finish line.
You had lost how many by that point before you brought in the equity partner? All 3 of these were lost prior to bringing them in, or no?
2 of them. And my dad talks about how you would have discussions with maybe local business owners. I would call it a handful, probably got closer than not to a finish line and just never got it. And my dad would tell the story that he values the business. You make $0, I'll give you 100 multiple. That's still 0.
Right.
But an equity group is going to look at it and say, as you were talking about earlier, Zach, there's a value to the customer list, to the Comfort Club members. These folks look at it a little different than we ever did, and probably did help the deals over.
I mean, we could probably have a whole podcast on this, but talent too, right? I mean, that's a pretty hard thing to get your hands on, right? So from technicians, installers, service team, etc. So I think too that a lot of businesses in general, especially the older ones and more so the less sophisticated, less savvy ones, don't value a lot of that stuff, right? Like we had someone on, I think it just went live this week. They were talking about their business, and I think it was 3,000, 3,500 active contacts, and maybe 2/3 of those were inactive or something, and 1/3 were active. And like the numbers that they were talking about were just like, it was hilarious. Like they paid nothing for the business. And it's like, you just got 3,000 to 4,000 people that are in your area that you could light up in a minute. I can't even do the quick math on it. Yeah, I can do the quick math. The dollar per customer, and get this, you're very hip to some of your marketing. And of course, they're not all active. Basically, $50 a contact. $50 a contact is, so you can do the math on that, right? That's how much they bought the business for. And it was just somebody that they got tired, and the spouse was sick or something, and they're just like, be done with it. Write me a check for this month, every month until it's paid off, and you're done.
When we had our first marketing coordinator come in, she was big on networking, and I found that to be comical. Like, networking is so dumb. What, you're going to go have a beer, have coffee, and you call that work? But then over time, like those connections that you make to get a contact list for $50 a person, and that's what networking does, and the value of it. But anything, whatever you make on the networking, the connection side, you never know when that day comes. Same thing we tell our teammates. If you're going to depart, you never know when you're going to need us or somebody on this team.
Right.
And it might just be to verify your employment so you can get the home loan, right? 20 years down the line, don't burn your bridges. You don't know when your opportunity is going to come. Same with networking. You don't know what. At this ACCA conference, when you're at the coffee, it could be that business owner that's ready to just essentially give away his business. That's why networking is so important.
There's a bunch of people out there that are building audiences to provide a network for their deal flow, right? Like that behind the scenes is a strategy. There's a couple people on Twitter. There's Tommy Mello, Home Service Freedom. That whole thing is to develop pipeline for people that are like, oh, yeah, cool. Like I want to be part of this, or I want to sell to you. That's massive, massive scale of examples. It's the same thing. I mean, it's just
Exactly.
a more
I mean,
sophisticated, modern version of it, right? And Twitter is the same thing. But okay, and then I guess just the flip side of that question, which is like, what was the easiest transaction and why?
probably the first one, our Nashville one, because we were just so all in. We were dialed in. It was our first one with the equity partners. Everybody just was A game, and it took kind of nothing for granted. No, doesn't mean we didn't make mistakes and learn along the way, but at the same point, the team was a little more willing to accept us when we got there. It was just a win-win. None of them have been easy. We don't know what the hell we're doing. We're getting better each time we do this, but we still got a long way to go. So they are all very sleepless, especially towards the end. But I want to change it.
Well, that's good. For the people that have never really participated in one of these things, what's your experience in terms of length, time it takes from, let's say, a letter of intent, not the having beers, because that can take years.
Yeah.
But letter of intent to deal close. What's your average length?
So for us, we're a little different. I'm going to say probably 3 to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And what
Okay.
makes the difference is we do have to negotiate with the franchisor for a new franchise agreement. At this point, we have the operating agreement, which is the main document, pretty much boilerplated with a few changes. We probably could do that in 30 to 45 days.
Do you have to go renegotiate, or is it in your best interest to renegotiate, or
we try and get all of our agreements as close to the same, just so we're not operating under different. I mean, we could, if we just sign what they gave us, we could be done in 45 days. They're not wholesale, but in fairness to the franchisor, they're trying to protect the integrity of their agreements, and we're trying to protect maybe a previous agreement, which might be outdated, but we're trying to get them as close as we can together. So for us, probably 3 to 6 months from the day we sign the LOI to the day that everything just comes to fruition.
Yeah.
We're better today. We're probably closer to 3 months because we have the operating agreement. We have gone through multiple revisions. Attorneys from different sides have picked them apart. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot that are negotiable on those things at this point.
Right.
A couple of tweaks here and there. So we've gotten better at that as of late.
What it's something we didn't touch on, which I do want to touch on, is what are within the franchise model and 1 hour franchise model, and what you guys have established for buying other franchisees. What do the deals look like in terms of how much cash you have to bring to the table? Do you have to bring all the cash to get them out? The interesting part about this, as I alluded to earlier, is that all these conversations are different, is that anything goes. So is there, within your model, is there, a quote market term that you guys are trying to set forth, or is, every deal different in terms of how you're bringing the cash or not bringing cash?
Each deal is different. In Nashville, the existing partners, 1, 2, 4 of them stayed on in a very minority interest. They rolled over equity, and then we brought cash to the table for a majority of that deal, but they all maintained some interest. And over time, most of them have gotten out, but a couple still remain. Pennsylvania, keep in mind, we're dealing with 3 totally different owners, no relationship to each other, and each one of those are structured completely different. Most of those are cash deals as well. On that one, we borrowed money from a bank, took a note. First time we've carried debt on our books in 30 years. My dad tells you how stressful carrying a note is, and it is. I mean, you owe money to the bank. It's different, but we keep doing that. And then we're about to complete a deal, hopefully in the next few weeks, which will be a lot of rollover equity to a younger partner in the business that we hope can become somebody very valuable to the organization. So everyone does have cash, but there are different structures as to the amount and how much is rolled over. There'll be some owner finance side from this current deal that we're about to complete. So everyone is different. I love listening to this kind of thing. Listen to Ken Goodrich talk about how they do deals, or some of these larger equity groups, Apex, et cetera, what they do and how they go about it. Because for us, it's wild, wild west. I'm not saying that's the right way or the wrong way, but that's how we've done it so far.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in general, you can both sides of it can make as complicated and as you want, or as easy as you want. It just depends on, how quickly you want to get it done, right? And to that end, has there been anyone? It sounds like Pennsylvania, but I just want to get clarification. Has there been anyone that's 100% cash and done? Once deal closes, the wire goes through, and then they're out.
I mean, there's been certain owners within that, but no one deal. So yeah, I mean, of the 3 locations in Pennsylvania, one of them was a complete cash and they're out.
Right.
One was
that's what I was asking.
Essentially 100% cash and they're out, but they also had an employment agreement for 2 years. So though they were bought out of the business, they retained employment for 2 years. And the third person in Pennsylvania did retain 8% interest, but that was mostly cash as well.
That's exactly what I was asking.
So if you think about it, honestly, we bought that business for 92% of it was cash.
Is that the only one that still has ownership stake from the previous or original franchisee?
No, Nashville actually still has 3 out of the 4. And again, they have interest only in that specific operation. Nashville, what we call Nashville Classic Air, Pittsburgh Classic Air. So yeah, we have 3 minority partners in the Nashville operation, 1 in Pittsburgh.
As part of those partnerships, are they just minority partners, no operational obligations, no nothing?
No, nothing.
Oh, wow.
Get a check.
Okay.
get a distribution. I mean, we have good relationships. I mean, one guy asks for the statements every month and we're happy to provide them. Most of them we don't even hear from.
Yeah.
And we just
happy to get their annuity.
Right? Yep. I mean, they're welcome to be involved. They're welcome to come visit, whatever, but we have not had that yet.
And Ryan, in the background, we may or may not listen to your input. Thank you for coming out. No, I'm just kidding.
We have a shredded box, which we call our suggestion box. You're welcome to put any comments and concerns in there.
And that's what you're entitled to as a minority owner. Thank you very much. Just a couple more things, just really quickly. So where you're at right now and your journey from joining back in 2008 to today, what would you go back and time and tell yourself, joining this back then to where you are now? Would you do anything different? Tell yourself, hey, make sure you do this differently. Hey, we missed this, whatever. Any wisdom or insights to in the Back to the Future machine?
2008, we joined in 2004. I came to 1 Hour 2008. There's a ton in my personal self journey, but as a business, as part of joining 1 Hour, I was still coming in, learning from the people that were here. We had a smaller but a very good leadership team, including my father. Vio is one of the smartest men I've ever met. So I'm just learning from him. He could probably give you those mistakes. I can talk about probably the last 10 years or so. I've been doing the 16 here, last 10 to 12 years of the mistakes I have made or we have made as a team. But as far as when we partner with the 1 Hour folks, for me, it was up and running by the time I got here. Yeah, there's a thing here and there, but in general, we were, I'll say, a fine-tuned operation by the time I showed up.
I would say that's a pretty successful, was that 16 years then? There's not too much. And our growth has been rapid. People always ask me this, like when I talk to somebody at a conference, at an event, how much do you attribute 1 Hour to your success or the franchise to your success? And I say, I would love to be selfish and tell you it's all us. They would love to be selfish and tell you it's all them. All I know is that together we've grown our business from the point that it was when we got here in 2004, which was about $5 million, to the point that we are today, which is, just shy of 25 million. Kind of like back to are we double dipping paying the franchise? I don't care how we get there, marketing. I don't care if it comes via radio, TV, internet. If our sales are growing, something's working. Right. Good advice and good wisdom in general. Every home service company, every HVAC company is a little bit different. And, as long as you're operating in those thresholds that you're happy with and make you feel comfortable and produce profits and margins that you're happy with, then win-win, right?
We look at 3 very basic pillars. We want double-digit growth, double-digit profitability, and 4.8 stars or higher from all of our locations on Google. If we are doubling the size of our business in 5 years.
4.8? What's the matter? 4.8, not 5?
4.8. No, because you got to piss a few people off. You got to take a few risks in business. 5,000 reviews, we're going to piss somebody off. Enterprise talked about you needed to have some debt on your books, whether bad debt that you had to write off. Because if you had none, you were not taking calculated risk. We got to push a little bit. We still serve the customer at an unbelievably high level, 5,000 reviews and 4.8 stars. I will take it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's really good. I'm just teasing. Same thing. If you could go back and help other HVAC contractors out there negotiate these waters, if you will, specifically on the deal size and the growth side, what would you tell them? Pick one or two things. Obviously, over 16 years, there's quite a few things, but one or two things that, you're like, if you just, focus on this or do this in terms of, how you're looking at acquisitions.
Number one lesson we've learned is make sure we have established leadership plans. These satellite locations, it is totally different when it is not your four walls. Our Virginia Beach team to this day runs pretty effectively. Yeah, we have ups and downs, but in general, but you have to have your leadership structure in place. You have to know what the next line of command is going to be, because it is different. Your culture is different outside your four walls, and you don't get the voice there that you do when you see your team every day. And it's been very challenging for us, to be quite honest. I'm transparent. We have struggled to replicate the same culture, the same, beliefs, the buy into what we do here in our satellite locations. And it's hard to get our leaders to buy into it. I mean, we keep trying different trainings and working hard at it, and we're not going to quit. But you have to have that plan in place, that order in place, because we spun our wheels in Nashville a couple of times because we did not have that. Didn't realize that was the foundational piece that we were missing.
Have you had to restructure your leadership org chart from 5 to 25 a few times, or every time, or what?
What we really needed to do was streamline what we were asking of certain people. And, we had a team here that was good, but when you look at your satellite offices, to think that you're going to take a Zach, and Zach does this so well in Virginia Beach, that I just need another Zach in this location. So we hire somebody expecting them to do what Zach does. It doesn't work that way. I hate the word more corporate, more structured in what we do. Very defined roles and what we were looking for out of that role, which we did not have here. This was a team. Everybody, hey, I'll pitch in with some marketing. You pitch in with the service team. You lead that training today, right? You don't have that without that central voice helping bring it all together. So in our other locations, we've gotten very structured of what we're looking for, what is expected on each and every day. What is good, what is bad. Checklist along the way to make sure that it's taken care of.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me one bit, and that makes a ton of sense. The last question on that is, within each new acquired franchisee and or location, do you have a specific model, or where, at every location outside of Virginia Beach has to have, I don't know, I'm just making up a title, but a vice president of Nashville North or whatever.
It's funny, you mentioned the name Tommy Mello, and I don't know Tommy. I saw Tommy speak. He spoke at one of our industry events, and it was maybe not the best conference I've ever been to. Kind of pissed off that I took the time to go. But that one speaker, Tommy, was phenomenal. He shared what he does with A1 Garage, which was centralizing everything from day one, ripping the Band-Aid off and getting your business structured. So that was something we went to a little over a year ago. So everybody does things the same way from day one. And we have a org chart that a branch manager should be able to walk into any of our branches, and you're going to see the same things being done the same way at the same time. We're still working on it, but that is exactly what we took from that conference, and we came back and implemented it. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I was at Home Service Freedom last fall, which is his conference thing. What I liked about that, just overarching, was the goal of that was to have everybody, be able to go home and take X, Y, or Z and, implement. That's what he wanted. He was like, this will be a success if every single one of you goes home, takes, one or two things and, implements it. So, and I think he strives for that too, which is very cool. And hard to do at a conference too. You're like, there's so much stuff going around. So
just reading the reviews from my own session, right? I mean, when you saw your name and somebody said they took something away from you, you're like, holy cow, I appreciate that. You took something away. So we took a very mediocre conference at best that Tommy was speaking at, but we took a golden nugget, something that really changed our business. Again, we answer all of our phones now for all locations. Just everything has become centralized. That comes from just listening at a conference, to one that I was already pissed off because I didn't like the content up to that point. But keeping the eyes and ears open, the mind open.
Well, based on that, it sounds like you need to go to more conferences that you don't think are good because...
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm a terrible judge of character.
Yeah. It was great having you. I appreciate your time. I don't think we're really connected on social. Where is your most active stomping ground for social?
I stalk everybody on social media, but I don't have any presence. You ain't gonna find, like, I got pictures from the original Facebook in 2004, I think is when it came out, and you had to have a .edu address. Ryan Kletz on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, that's a wrap, and we will cut there. So everybody, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks again, Ryan, and go get them.